Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 177. A good Chodesh to everyone and to all. We wish each other a ksiva v'chsima teva, a blessed new year, physically and spiritually, in all matters, all in good health. This is the month when we account for the last year and we prepare for the new year. Chodesh HaCheshbon and Chodesh HaAchana is the expression. So in that spirit, we've been speaking about this the number of weeks already, being that we're moving from Av into Elul. But every day of Elul, now we're on the 5th of Elul, we progress in this process. And in a way, we're walking in the steps of the great Moshe Rabbeinu, who climbed up the mountain for the third and last time, Mount Sinai, on Rosh Chodesh Elul, and would spend 40 days until he would return with complete forgiveness. Salachti kidvarecha on Yom Kippur. So it's a journey. And each step has its particular focus, each of us in our own personal way, to look at what our lives are like, examine what has been going on. Like in any good business, in any good venture, you always want to look at what has been done, what can be improved, and what can be added and increased as we go into a new year. And in direct proportion to our making a keli, to our making the containers, this means through our efforts, we receive the channels of blessings. Because it's exactly that, it's a channel. You can have a blessing, but if the channel is not open, or the channel is in any way constricted, or in any way, it's like someone wanting to give you a gift, but you don't have pockets, you don't have a basket, you don't have hands to hold it in, then the gift can be squandered. So we always hope that Hashem, God, will always give us the gifts no matter what. And it says in Chassidus, the expression, V'hu yechalkalecha, that he will also make a keli, yechalkalecha from the word also keli, that he should also create the keli. But the fact is, when we create the container, it's obviously much more sustainable and much more integrated and internalized, as Chassidus explains, the advantage of an asus dilatata, when we initiate ourselves, because then we own it. Then it becomes ours, and it's not just given to us from above. And that's what Anila Deidi V'Deidi Li, which is the first and most prominent of the acronyms of the month of Elul. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. It starts with Anila Deidi, as opposed to a different order in Nisan. The pasuk is V'Deidi Li V'Anilai, my beloved to me, and I to him. So who initiates them? My beloved, which refers to God. In Anila Deidi, we initiate. Anila Deidi and V'Deidi Li in a commensurate, and it reciprocates in a proportionate way, which also is consistent with the famous mashal that the Rebbe made so popular, that the Alter Rebbe uses in Likutei Torah in the month of Elul Re'eh. The Melech Basada, in explaining why these days are so special, he asked the famous question, the classic question, if, as the Zohar and Kabbalah explains, these days of Elul, the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim radiate, which are the 13 attributes of divine compassion that Hashem revealed to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu when he was on the mountain. So why aren't they Yom Tov? That's what makes a Yontav a Yontav. Yontav is not just a random thing. It's because there's a special Gilei Elokus, divine revelation, on that particular day. Since this entire month has such a special revelation, why is it not? Why are these days not Yom Tov? And he answers with the Mashal Melech Basada, because Elul is like the Melech, meaning the king, God, Melech Malchem Lochim, is in the field. In the field is Uvdin Dechel, meaning involved in the mundane matters, that the revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim is on our terms in our mundane life. When it comes to Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, and Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, and Yom Kippur, these are days where we have to actually separate ourselves in some way from our mundane. It's not a work day. And that's as we greet God in the palace. But Melech Basada is like a preparatory month where the king comes out and greets everyone b'sever ponim yofis, with a wide smile, with a broad smile, and with the ponim secher case, a smiling face, sever ponim yofis, in a very kind way, compassionate way, Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim, and everybody can ask whatever it is that they want to ask for. So in a way, it's like receiving the divine blessings in preparation for the new year on the terms of the mundane and weekday, the regular scheduled day. Excuse me. With that, let us also address, since each week there's another parsha in Elul itself. There's a parsha, usually starts Shabbos Avarchim, is usually the A in most years, and then comes Sheftim, and then comes Teitzei. Teitzei l'mochama alevecha, which is this week's parsha. Today is the first day of that parsha, and it will be read, the full chapter will be read this coming Shabbos. So Teitzei has many lessons, but one key lesson that I'd like to emphasize, which is part of how we actually make this accounting and how we prepare, is, as often is the case, we look at sometimes life as challenges. Life is filled with challenges. And there are many ways how we deal with challenges. Some people are in denial and they avoid challenges. Some people are too confrontational and aggressive and they just love and embrace challenges. How should we actually look at a challenge or a battle? And this can be both in a psychological level, psychologically, internally, how we deal with our own internal adversaries, or an external, dealing with difficult people or challenges with situational challenges we may be in. So the Torah tells us in this pasuk, two key words here that seem to be strange. Literally means when you will wage war with your enemies. So the question is, why does it say Teitzei? It should say kisilcham, when you wage war. Teitzei is an extra word, and every word in the Torah is precise. Teitzei means to go out and wage war, to go out. Then comes the next expression. It should have said be'evecha, imeivecha, with your enemies. It says alevecha. Alevecha literally means above your enemies. Al, above. And the Rebbe explains in a very beautiful way, which has so many psychological and personal and emotional applications, Chassidus Applied, that both words come to teach us a tremendous lesson. In psychology and even in philosophy, there's the question, are we destined to a life of battle? Some people call life is a battlefield. This world is a battlefield. That if you're lucky and you're blessed and you grow up in a healthy home, so you have a nurturing home, there's peace. But as soon as you enter the world around you, it's a hostile world. It's hostile in the sense of competition, hostile in the sense of greed, corruption, people want to take advantage. In the extreme term, survival of the fittest. And you can see life is a battle. That doesn't mean you're fighting every day, but it means you're potentially fighting every day, because who knows who wants what from whom and what they'll do to get it. If it's the worst scenario, it can actually be real battles, as the Jewish people unfortunately have seen throughout history, and thank God not in the last few decades, but even in Israel, the challenges of people who literally go to war against the Jewish people, individually or collectively. So how do you deal when you look at this? Is the world indeed a battlefield, and we have to simply we see ourselves as soldiers, as military people who are basically have to figure out how to defend and protect ourselves? That's the question. And if so, what's the attitude? Comes the verse and says, which means you are not a battler, and neither is your life a battlefield. You go to battle outside. You have to go out of your own internal domain to fight out there, which is also a tremendous lesson, that any battle you fight is not in your terms and not in your turf. It's a battle where the enemy is. There are battles in life, but that does not define you and your essence. It's a Teitzei, a tzia. You have to go out to wage war. And the second point is you're never an equal with your adversaries. You're always alevecha. You're above them, which essentially means that the neshama is sent down to this world for a purpose. It's a difficult world. There's no question about it. To the point that Shammai says, and in this case the ruling is like Shammai, that it's more pleasant not to be born than to be born, because the life is difficult. And life is kol hadrachim b'cheskes sakana. All the paths are filled with danger. And even if a person is blessed and lives a relatively peaceful life, there are always challenges. And then, of course, there's real suffering, and there's real pain, and there's loss, and there's injustices. And I don't want to go through the whole list of the difficulties in life. But Shama comes down for a purpose, is sent down here. It's not a punishment. On the contrary, Neshama is sent down and says, Neshama shenasata b'taherehi. Your soul, we say every morning, is pure. No matter what impurity you're going to face, or no matter what type of corruption, no matter what type of defilement, even your own actions that may have in some way compromised your own values, no matter what you encounter, every morning your soul is pure. Why? Because the battle is not in your soul, in your pure soul. It's outside. Then ata barasa, you have created it. Ata yitzarta, you've shaped it. Ata nefachta bi, you've imbued, instilled it in me. You protect it within me. Yes, we need protection because it's a difficult world. But your essence remains pure, and all the protection and all the battles are Teitzei, are outside of yourself. And any enemy is not you. It's not equal to you. So you always need to know you are a winner. The Alter Rebbe, when he explains in Perek Chavav the beautiful mashal, why depression, atzvus, is such a terrible thing, he gives the example of two people struggling and wrestling with each other, and one of them feels depressed. Basically, even if you're stronger but you feel down, you won't be able to fight properly. So we're told all battles are outside of you, and you are always superior to any enemy that comes your way. Because you're sent here with a power. Every soul is given. When the Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of Tanya, where he says, Mashbiyan Eisei, Tihi Tzadik V'al Tihi Rasha. It's Mashbiyan, the Alt Tzemach Tzedek interprets, Mashbiyan doesn't just mean an oath, a shvua, a promise, a vow, but it also means Mashbiyan from the word V'savot, V'achalta V'savot, Mashbiyan, that you are sated, you're saturated, you're fed, you're nourished with power to deal with the challenges to be a tzaddik and not a rasha. So we don't come unprepared, we don't come neutral. We come higher than any enemy, and it's outside of us. The neshama, Vayetze Yaakov meBe'er Sheva, the Erechaim interprets that as the descent of the soul. Again, Vayetze, he goes away from Be'er Sheva, the fountain of seven, as the soul is rooted in the menorah of seven branches. And it goes where? Vayelech Charana. Charana is divine wrath, Charein Af Shel Mokim. But that's outside of our natural place. So recognizing that no matter what happens in life, and let's talk about it on a personal level, we deal with many challenges, personal challenges, family challenges, psychological challenges, real, imagined. Always know that you are above the challenge. And you have the power to overcome it. And you're sent with those powers. So it is outside of who you really are. Battle should be fought not in your internal space. And number two, that you're always above it. And therefore, Nesat Hashem Elokecha B'yadecha, and Hashem will definitely give you and the power to overcome and vanquish any enemy, as the pasuk continues. So it's a tremendous lesson in the month of El that even when we're doing cleanup and accounting, and we may find some dust in our lives, and we may find some toxins, and we may find other negative stuff, impurities, recognize, yes, they're there, and we can't ignore them, but that doesn't define you. It happened. And even if you did it deliberately, you can correct it. That's what this month is about. And preparing for the new year in a completely new experience, recognizing that you are above, you're going outside of yourself to fight these battles and clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up. That doesn't define the tahira, the pure you. And number two, that you're always above those enemies, which gives you an edge because you have that confidence, as the Rebbe brings from Friedrich Rebbe and other places, the custom that they would go out to war. In some armies, even before they waged the first battle, they would sing a song of victory. With absolute confidence that they will be victorious. Why? They didn't even fight a battle because that's the attitude. Similar to why we wear white on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, as the Torah says, why do you wear white? We're in judgment. How do you know whether it'll be white or black would be guilty and white is innocent? You haven't even begun to be judges before Rosh Hashanah. He says, because Ufi Shalom Azu, the personality, the human, actually, the Jewish people are such that they know the personality of Hashem, and they know that they are going to be definitely victorious. That's the attitude. Why? How do they know? Because even if they made a mistake, they know that they can correct it, and they will correct it, and they know for sure it will be accepted. As Moshe Rabbeinu assured us when he received the Salachti Kidvarecha, the forgiveness of God, after the great sin of the golden calf. The power of tshuva and the power of hope. Now, in the month of Elul itself, this week also happens to be the anniversaries of the wedding of the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab on the 11th of Elul, in the year Tov Reish Lamed Hey, equivalent would be 1875, and the 13th of Elul, the Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe, in the year Tov Reish Nun Zayin, which was the year 1897. So, there are many lessons we can learn from the Chassidus of the Rebbeim. First of all, the Chassidus that was said on those days was Maimorim, the Friedrich, Rebbe Rashab said Maimorim. We have the Maimon Tov Reish Nun Zayin, Samach to Samach, and other Maimorim that the Rebbe Rashab said in honor of the Frierdiker Rebbe's wedding. So we have a lot of Chassidus that came out of it. And the same thing, the Rebbe Marash said Maimorim in Tov Lamed Hey when the Rebbe Rashab got married. Generally speaking, a marriage, especially from Rebbeim, is a king and queen getting married with a goal of a union that will be a sacred union that is a melech b'lei matranisa, a king without a queen, that you see, whether we know all the stories, and most of it was very private, is essentially the establishment of the leadership of a Rebbe. The famous custom that the Rebbeim had right before Rosh Hashanah, literally the day before, right before the Rosh Hashanah would begin, they would go into the Rebbetzin and talk to the Rebbetzin for a little while. The Rebbe explained because it's Binyan HaMalchus. So in the Chodesh Elul, in the month of Elul, we're building Malchus, we're building the kingship, we're building the relationship. So where does relationships begin? That is the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, in a very general sense. In addition, connection with the Frierdiker Rebbe's wedding, we also know is the establishment of Temchet Mimim a little while later, and we'll talk about that in the coming week. As when we get closer to that period, this year will be 120 years. Tafresh Nun Zayin, we are now in Tafshin Ayin Zayin. So it's 120 years from when the Frierdiker Rebbe got married, and 120 years from when the establishment of Yeshivas Temchet Mimim. So you see, from that was the birth of what? The birthing that came out, which is Talmidim Elah Abonim Elah Talmidim. Children and are the students. Are the children. The birthing of the yeshiva, which is really the birthing of all shluchim and all chassidim and all of us, all sons and daughters of the Rebbeim, who are our teachers. With this, I'd like to mention, I want to dedicate this class, this particular episode to my assistant, Chana, who, with her husband Beryl, had a baby girl this past week. Her name is Risha. She was born on the first day of Rosh Chodesh Elul. I want to wish them, and of course the newborn and the whole family should grow up to Teira L'chupla Maisim Tevim, a lot of Yiddish and Chassidish Shanachas, with many healthy, good years, and truly be a soldier and a shlucha of the Rebbe, and fulfilling what the Rebbe wants to fulfill in this world. I feel a special honor doing so because Chana has been preparing with me over the last 9 months, as this baby was learning in her mother's womb the entire Torah, but even before that, these episodes. So though she's behind the scenes, but I think it's a good opportunity here as to acknowledge those that help make these programs happen, which is collecting the questions, organizing them, cross-referencing, and all that's necessary, and plenty of work in making these programs. So I wanted to dedicate this to Risha, the newborn girl, to Chana and Beryl. To go back to the topic that we're discussing here, which is the lessons. So we know also that the Rebbe said, when the Rebbe spoke about Tafshin Yud Daled, spoke of the 25th anniversary from when the Rebbe got married. So he said, "Das ist der Tag, was mir zugebunden zu euch und euch zu mir." This is the day that bound me to you and you to me, because of course the Rebbe marrying the Rebbe Tzachai Mushka made the Rebbe as being the son-in-law of the Frierdiker Rebbe and essentially connecting him to all the Chassidim. And Mizal Zen, the Rebbe said, "V'hiratz Mizal Zen Peiras Tevis," we shall see many good fruit. Now this is even more so, I wouldn't say more so, equally so, with all the Rebbeim, that there's a new stage when there's a chasana. The chasana, as Chassidus explains, and these Maimorim talk about the Yichud Zun, Zov, and Nukva. And of course, by a Rebbe's chasana, it's similar to the Yichud Kutsha Bricha V'Shchinta, where every marriage reflects the divine marriage of Matan Torah, which is part of the content of the Maimorim. So it's not just a simple day, it's a day, and it was interesting that it was actually intended, as much as possible, the Rebbeim tried to make the marriages in the month of Elul, which is, of course, Mazel Psula, Anila Deidi V'Deidi Li. So it just adds a dimension to the whole relationship between us and the divine in Elul, and being Melech Basada, the connection also of the Rebbeim that got married in the month of Elul. Okay. I wanted to, before we continue going further, since there was a question about something related to last week's program, I should say, that this Pas Shabbos yesterday was Pasha Sheftim. And of course, there's the classic Fabrengen and Sikha, the Rebbe spoke Sheftim Tafshin Nun Aleph 26 years ago, which was Sheftim, where the Rebbe spoke about the famous talk about that Yesh Lefasim to publicize that there's a Novi B'Yisrael, there's a prophet in Israel, a visionary who is telling us that Mashiach, the Geula, is coming. The Sikha is printed, everybody can look it up, and Sefer HaSichos Tafshin Nun Aleph. But someone asked me the question just literally this past week and said, so what happened with that? Was that publicized? Should it be publicized? How should it be publicized? It's 26 years later. What was the Rebbe's intention? So though I didn't know about it at the time, just a while ago, I think it was a year ago, that came to my attention that after that sikha, which I had the honor and the zchus to actually prepare for publication, write it up, the Chazorah, first for the Rebbe said Shabbos, and then prepare it for the Rebbe's edits, and the Rebbe edited it, and then it was published, that in Israel, they wanted to fulfill the directive by actually making a very public campaign to do what the Rebbe said, to be mefarsim. That's what the Rebbe said, to publicize. That there's a Novi and Gula. And the Rebbe responded to Reb Shmuel Chafer, and this is the language that the Rebbe said. It's a very interesting and very fascinating. I thought I would share it because it's not really known. The Rebbe writes, I'll read it in Hebrew, it's one line and I'll translate. Be'im hanal yochel ha'ases, be'kelim de'elam atikun, v'zet tzorech l'shayir asken be'elam atikun, la'acher izbonnus be'efen de'elam atikun. So the Rebbe is basically making a condition that if you can do that, if you can publicize it in a way that is done b'kelim of the world of tikkun, which means the world of tikkun is an organized world, a structured world, not toyu would be, like the Rebbe says, a chof ches nissen siche, eres de te would be wild energies, powerful energies, but it has to be b'kelim de tikkun, which means it has to be presented in a way that doesn't burn up the world, that doesn't create unnecessary controversy and sensationalism, but something that can be explained in tikkun in an organized and in a palatable and zugängliche in Yiddish you would say way, a palatable and receptive way. Be'efen ha'miskabel would be a language used elsewhere in Chayesod and Beis on this matter. Then the Rebbe continues, that tzarech l'shayir. Not just that I have to be in Kelim the Tikkun, the person who, the way it's going to be has to be done. The Shayat has to be strategized and estimated by someone who's an askin in the world of Tikkun. So it's not just enough to do in Kelim Tikkun. You need someone from the world of Tikkun that will figure out how to do that. La'achri is bonus after a contemplation and a review in a way that be'efen de elam Tikkun. So basically 3 conditions all about Tikkun. Because you could have someone from Toyu coming and saying, this is the way they do it in Tikkun. That's not enough. No. You need someone from the world of Tikkun and with his bonus api the world of Tikkun. Now Tikkun here, in the Chassidus, Tikkun is Atzilus. The Tikkun of Toyu. It's interesting that when you think about it, if you learn Chassidus, you see that Toyu, the problem was a twofold problem. One is that the Eidos were merubim, the energies were too intense, and the number 2 was the Ke'ilim mu'atim, and the containers were too small. So what happens when you have 2 intense energies and 2 small containers? It bursts, it shatters. That's called Shviras HaKelim. What's the Tikkun? So Chassidus explains the Tikkun is that the Eidos are weaker, not as intense, and the Kelim are wider and more expansive. So then you can have a healthy balance, and you have Eidos b'Kelim, and you have a world of repair and healing and healthy world instead of a chaotic and destructive world. Now remember, Toyu is not a negative energy. It's not Klippa, God forbid. It's a holy world, but it's a world of imbalance. Chassidus explains in different examples of what Elam HaToyu is. Yet the Rebbe comes and says, when it comes to Gula Mashiach and Chavches Nissen Sicha, Eidos the Toyu in Kelim the Tikkun. Chassidus again, Eidos the Tikkun and Kelim the Tikkun. Eidos the Toyu means, yes, we're going to have intense energies, wild energy, even radical and revolutionary energy. However, it's packaged in Kelim the Tikkun so it can be absorbed. And in this answer, it's very clear. That's what he's talking about. Because this statement about there's a prophet and so on has to be done in a world of Tikkun. So I asked what happened after that. So obviously what happened was some people saw that this is an impossibility. We don't have people from the world of Tikkun. We only have people from the world of Toyu who may think that they come from Tikkun. And therefore, they never ended up making the campaign. But the directive, if you read it, is not, the Rebbe knew how to say no if he wanted to say no. He's saying, Be'im hanal yachol. If you can do it, meaning that there is a possibility, and I would say there is definitely a possibility, or else the Rebbe wouldn't have given this option. And that is, my friends, what I believe is lacking. This is the story. The intense energy, the message, the power of the message, Mashiach's coming, Geula is very powerful. But the key thing is to do it in a way, not just that it doesn't disturb and shake up the world, but in a way that the world can absorb it. Because the point here is that you want the world to accept and to receive the message and be able to act on it. If you overwhelm somebody or you confuse them, you defeat the purpose. So I just felt it appropriate to read, being that we're literally a day from Shaftim, which was yesterday, so though we're already in the week of Teitzei, just to read that letter, that answer. I'd love to hear everybody's feedback, and here's a good opportunity to invite your comments, questions at our forum, completely anonymous. If you want any information that we need to send to you, we need your email address, but without that, it's completely anonymous at meaningfullife.com/mylife. Now let's go to a question. Spouses learning together. Before I go to that, I just want to mention Teitzei in the topics I spoke about are also cross-referencing an Elul connected to episodes 31 and 34, in addition to last week's episode where I also spoke at length about Elul and some of its lessons. So now spouses learning together. I started a custom of learning with my wife every Thursday night. Firstly, do the Rebbeim ever talk about such a custom? Secondly, what would you suggest we learn? So firstly, absolutely beautiful. Even though it's true the Rebbe says that you don't marry a chavrusa, and it's not, but nevertheless, spouses learning together is a tremendous way of adding a dimension to shalom bayis and also preventing other issues. And I just want to share a little story since it's somewhat connected. So though I don't officiate many weddings, but some I do, especially people who are my students or people who the only way they're connected to Yiddishkeit and so on is through me, and they ask me to do that, so I do that. And of course, in officiating a wedding, it's not just officiating, it's preparing the chas and kala, teaching them and sending them to the right teachers to learn both the halachas and the hashkafas. And I give them once in a while my 2 cents and talk about the Chassidic approach, what is marriage, the significance and so on. One of the things I always say is, on a practical level, besides of course the 3 foundations of every Jewish marriage, which is kashrus, Shabbos, Ner Shabbos, and Taras HaMishpacha, the Rosh Tevis Chana, Chala Nida, Lokas Neres, as the Rebbe speaks, the 3 mivtzoim, but there are the 3 foundations, which is, of course, a healthy intimacy and a kedusha dika one, sacred one. So number 2, Adlokas Neres, which is the lighting of candles, but the whole Shabbos, that leads to Shabbos. And number 3, kashrus achila v'shtiya, not necessarily in that order. As also we know from Sarah and then Rivka, that Sarah, those were the 3 things that stood out, that Yitzchak was recognized that Rivka is the right one because she had those 3 things like his mother did. So besides that, which of course is the foundations, I always make a suggestion, and this is a pure optional suggestion, I say to the couple, it would be a good idea, being that a marriage is more than just a contractual arrangement, it's not more than just 2 people deciding to be together and building a family and so on. It's also a sacred union, a spiritual union, that from time to time, maybe once a month, host something in your house, an event, invite guests, have someone speak, give a little charity, do something that take on good resolutions, learn some Torah and so on. And another suggestion I make is to study together. Take once a week, whether it's Thursday or another day in the week, an hour, whatever time you like, but commit to studying together, reading a book together, studying the Parsha, something that speaks to both of you. Anyway, this I a suggestion, most people accept it, and I said, do it now, make the resolution now before you get married, because then you'll stick with it. Later you get too busy and you can't fit in new habits, we all know, but introduce new routines is very difficult. Do it when you get married, that's your decision. A couple that I knew, I married them off, and they committed to doing all of this, and they're a beautiful couple. Years later, I met them, maybe 6, 7 years later, and they came to see me. One of the things they shared with me that they had a very difficult time the last 2 years, to the point they were about to end up finishing their marriage. He was busy doing this, she was busy, to the point they really couldn't agree about anything. There were points they said they didn't talk to each other even. That's how angry they were at each other. But they kept to what their commitment was. Every Thursday, at the end of the day work, they studied something together. So even if they weren't talking, that's what they stuck to. They said that saved our marriage because it became an oasis where one thing we stuck to, and when we needed it, it became the thing that saved us. Because everything else, whether domestic issues, money issues, other personal issues, nothing they were communicating. But this, they committed to something that wasn't about them. It was about learning something that's not their opinion, my opinion, your opinion. It's about God's Torah. So the power of such a connection is tremendous. As again, that does not mean a marriage is based on chavrusa and learning. People should have their outlets, and men should be learning their shiurim, women their shiurim, etc. But to have that additional component can be a tremendous asset, because what it does is it solidifies Hashem's presence, as we know. Eish, Ish and Isha are both Eish, but you introduce Yud K, the Ish, the Yud and the Ish, and the A and the Isha, then you have a union, two flames joining. But if you take out the Yud K, God forbid, it's flames that can destroy each other. So the Etzem Minyan is a tremendous thing, and it's a good opportunity since you bring it up. And of course, the month of Elul, Anila Deidi V'Deidi Li. Now, of course, as I said, a marriage is much more than this. It's a family. It's all the other decisions, the whole building of a home, and building a mishkan in your life, and being a neir, a oir, a beis vad l'chachamim, a house that shines out to all others. But this component is a tremendous one, so I want to commend you for that. And I have not seen from the Rebbeim actually talking about this particular thing. I may later isi in the raya, meaning if I haven't seen doesn't mean it hasn't been said. If anybody has heard any such directive or even mention in a letter or in a sikha or in a yechidus, please share it, and I'll share it with the public for the benefit of Tevis HaRabim, Tevis HaTzibur, for the benefit of everybody. I don't recall seeing something like that specifically, even though it sounds to me like the Rebbe, something the Rebbe would say to some people and saying, to encourage people connecting that way, maybe Shabbos and so on. But again, I didn't see it specifically, or at least I don't remember seeing it, so I can't say 100%. But the spirit of it, I have no question, is correct. And regarding what to learn, so we all know the rule is, even individually, b'mokim shali bechafetz. When a student asked his teacher, what should I learn? He said, what your heart desires. And that doesn't mean, b'mokim could be the physical place, which city, which community, and so on, which share, but it also can mean b'mokim, the place in Torah where your heart desires. And always advising people in this regard, you see from the Rebbeim, they always try to focus on something because you want to stick with it. So you want to find the area in Torah that both of you relate to. Now, I would recommend something from Chassidus. It could be something in Derech Mitzvosecha, is one of the Sfarim that the Rebbe mentions is a good place to begin. Mitzvah Avos Yisrael maybe in Derech Mitzvosecha. It could be pieces of Tanya. But it's not limited to that. It could be in the Parsha, it could be Jewish history, it could be Tanakh, it could be Halacha, Rambam, it could be Chitas. There's many things you can do, and they're all good options. But I think particularly if you want to make this unique in this learning together, to find something that both of you really share, and really just sit down and say, what do which part of Torah that you've learned in the past really resonated with you? What do you gravitate to? And that's what I would focus on, because then it becomes also much richer because you really personally relate to it, and of course benefit in that fashion. Okay. With that, let us move to the next question, and that is, what does the Torah say about anger management? So we can call it Chassidic anger management, being that this is Chassidus Applied. Maybe that's an oxymoron, a contradiction of terms, because a Chassid shouldn't get angry, especially when you know what it says in Tanya, in the Geras HaKedesh, about anger, that it's like a Veda Zara, the Chazal say, and the Alter Rebbe explains why. Because why are you getting angry? Everything that happens is b'hashgacha pratis, as the Alter Rebbe explains at length. But let me read the question and try to address it to the best of my ability based on the sources. Okay. I've been working in therapy for a few years now from emotional and physical abuse. And any concept that I hear, I need to see it in the Torah. And there are many that took some extensive research to find, yet when it comes to anger, it is hard for me to find strong support from Torah. There's just a few shaky mekaymes that I found. Shaky. Rambam Halacha 4 in Hilchos Deis, Perek Rishon, Perek Aleph Halacha Daled. But then in the next Perek he says one should not have any anger. 2, Kitzur Siman, I guess Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Siman 29, Halacha 13. This is not anger per se, but about defending oneself. Okay. I also found the Rebbe's letters. The Rebbe wrote sometimes very sharp, strong letters to people who it seems were critical. The question is, what does one do when they have anger? Many people have anger and refuse to deal with it, causing so much pain and distance. The classic approach stated in Tanya, I've yet been able to successfully implement. The opposite happens, I just get more angry. And if we think about it from a logical perspective, it makes a lot of sense to be angry, and yet everywhere we look it says not to be angry. Okay. So I'm not sure why you did not refer to Siman Chaf Aleph in Ageres HaKedesh. It's Chaf Aleph. Yeah. Where the Alter Rebbe says that I just referred to earlier, and he explains, Kol HaKeis Kilo Eved Aved Zara. Why would the Gemara say someone who gets angry is like idol worship? Please. I mean, how could you compare the two? Idol worship is one of the Yareg Val Yaver, one of the sins you're supposed to die before you violate it. Yes, it compares to that. So the Alter Rebbe explains, because what's Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah is worshiping something that's not God. Worshipping yourself. Worshipping your fears. And he says there with a famous expression, Ala nizik kvar nigzeh min hashamayim. If something happens to you, it's already been designated from above that should happen. So to be angry at the person who perpetrated it is completely ignoring that that's what happened to you no matter what. Because Harbi Drachim L'Makim, Harbi Shluchim L'Makim, Hashem has many messengers. Someone else would have done it if not that person. And he says clearly, that person will be punished al Re'eh B'chiraseh for his bad choice, and he did it. No question, he's accountable. That's the key thing to understand. But the experience that you had to have. So what is the anger? At what? It's not about the person. But that personalization of it, attributing power to someone else over you, is a form of Avodah Zarah. It's a form of giving power to a force that's not God and forgetting that there's Hashgacha Pratis. Is it easy to reach that level? Obviously not. That's why we have to be told. Especially people who get impulsively, who get reflexively anger, and I'm going to distinguish between the two now. There are people who grew up in homes where they saw anger all the time, unfortunately. Parents who got angry, small things, and it became in a child's impressionable mind a legitimate way of expressing your upsetness. You get angry. That's a weapon. It's a way of getting even. It's a way of retaliating. It's a way of defending yourself. That, of course, needs a lot of work because you first have to come to realize it's not even a legitimate approach. It was by, unfortunately, a parent that did not know better, and maybe they learned it from their parents, and just not acceptable. Then there's anger that's not so deeply embedded, anger that we just get angry because either we're self-consumed, we didn't get it our way. Now, in each case, anger management is critical, because there is no place for anger in a healthy person's life. Not just not to get angry at others, because anger ultimately contaminates you. You become an angry person. And anger is a very negative attribute. And then, of course, there's getting angry at yourself. Why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? The regrets that are connected to it. I once heard in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, I've always been looking for the source. If someone knows the source, I would appreciate it. The Baal Shem Tov says, Rishayim Maleim Charotas. Wicked people are filled with regrets. Why? Because they don't believe in Hashgacha Pratis. So they're always regretting. I should have done that, I should have done this. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, chapter 11, interprets it differently. Maleim Charotas is a Rosh V'Tevle, because he has a nitzutz, a spark of the divine soul that's awake in him. So therefore he feels regret. Now Rosh V'Rale doesn't even feel regret. But the Baal Shem Tov, I heard this in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, as I said, I've been looking for it, I haven't never found the actual source. But regardless, the idea is that you start getting angry at yourself. Anger is a toxic, negative force. There's nothing positive about it. Now, we're not getting now into when you say, what about God getting angry in the Torah? Or you see tzaddikim getting angry at the Rishoyim and so on. It's a very different type of anger. It's not an impulsive anger. It's not a reflexive one. It's not because they lost control. It's an expression of discontent, not angry at the individual, angry at the situation. You get angry when someone, for example, says like the words tachlis sinas senesim by tzaddikim, they hate anything that's opposite of kedusha. Not they hate someone. There's a hatred. They despise golus. They despise illness. Think of it that way. But that's a whole different story, and we're not discussing that here. Here we're talking about the anger that we all understand as being a negative force that has nothing positive. So the question is, how do you condition yourself? So whether you come from the category that this is something you've seen in your life and has become part of your so-called routine because you grew up with it, or it's something that's due to your own selfishness, the Alter Rebbe does not distinguish and says, end of the day, it comes down to the more you're connected and understanding that your soul is here for a purpose, and every trial and tribulation that comes your way is part of that purpose, that there's no room for anger. There's room for passion. There's room for overcoming the challenges. We spoke before about Teitzei l'milchama, alevecha. Anger is another milchama. So the milchama, whether it's with the situation or with your own feelings of anger, is that it's not about you. The first thing you have to say, vit pastis, that a chelik elekam mal mamish should get upset, should get angry. If something is motivating you, you feel upset about something, by all means, channel it into positive action. But not a loss of control, of rage, of yelling, screaming, abusing, physical abuse, verbal abuse, and so on. So does this need work? Absolutely. But the work doesn't begin when you're in the middle of a fit of rage. The work begins beforehand. The work is sitting down and saying, you know what, I have an issue with anger. I'm going to do something about it. You have to expose yourself with a heavy dose of Chassidus, learning the Ageres HaKadosh, learning other places in Chassidus. Get control over your neshama. Get control and see, do you also have strong positive reactions? When you see someone do something nice, do you also get as passionate as when you get angry? Look at yourself. And month of Elul is a perfect time to do so. And you prepare in the years of plenty for the years of famine. You don't wait till you have a moment of rage. If a person taka is provoked, so one of the solutions is go out for a walk. Never allow the person near you become your target practice. In your line of fire. Get out of the way if it's a child, if it's a spouse, if it's a friend, if it's anyone, a stranger. If you have anger, go find a way to release it, just like we go and release, go take a walk by the water, go yell at yourself, not bang your head in the wall, but do something to release it, do physical exercise, get the anger out of you rather. But not to target someone, not to direct it at any person, because it's like literally, it is, words kill, and anger is a killing agent. So, however the challenge is, we have that capacity, and Chassidus does talk about it. I'm not sure why you're not referring to this Ageres HaKadosh or other places, but this topic is discussed, and I have definitely talked about this in previous episodes. I don't have now the cross-reference, but if you look anger, if you search anger on meaningfullife.com, I'm sure you'll find more discussion on this topic. Okay. Well, moving from one vice to another, overcoming selfishness. Dear Rabbi Jacobs, these sessions have been such an inspiration to me and so many of my good friends. You really make such a difference in our lives. Thank you. Thank you, the person writing to me, so I'm thanking them in return, yes. I'm writing because I'm wondering about how to be less selfish. The Tanya today would be when this person wrote it, so I'm not sure what day. Okay, the Tanya today talks about how we shouldn't be like the people that do things only for themselves, but I feel like I do almost everything just for myself. Even when I do something for others, even when I give a lot of myself and make serious commitments to help others, I'm often doing it for a sense of satisfaction or because I know that giving to others is essential for my emotional well-being. Especially because I'm single and living on my own, I get to pick and choose how I want to give or be nice. I have no serious obligations to anyone and really have to consult anyone before making a decision. I also think I've gotten lazier about helping others, and I'm not sure how to break out of that. It is just easy when you know you don't need to do much to get by. There's a lot of Chassidus out there about how we aren't here for ourselves, and it doesn't seem to speak to me as much anymore. In other words, that we're here to serve others. Is it possible to do something truly altruistic? I used to believe it was. If you could explain how to make selfishness, if you could explain how to make selflessness part of life, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, firstly, I appreciate your candidness and bluntness and self-awareness to be able to describe yourself in this way. Not such a, let's put it this way, it doesn't shine such a beautiful light on you. Is itself awareness of a problem is half the cure. So that is a good step in the right direction. It is a challenge and a serious challenge because even the Rambam paskins, the end of Hilchos Tshuva, based on the Gemara in Kedushin, le'elim yasek adam b'teira mitzvah shalei l'shma, shemetech l'shalei l'shma ba l'shma. That a person le'elam always should toil or work in mitzvahs for ulterior motives, because from ulterior they'll come to do it for pure intention. Only Avram Avinu, Avram Oyevi, Avram, my beloved, Hashem says, was able to do so. He did truth because it was true. Which of course begs the question, which is a side discussion, what does it mean in the end of Perek Aleph of Tanya? That means